Hi, welcome to the demonstration about installing fasm on a Windows operation system. First, we are going to get into the Flat Assembler website. I click my browser. This is the Firefox browser, by the way. And I go into the Flat Assembler website, flatassembler.net. Let's look at the website. We have here pretty nice online documentation that we can look at. Mostly the very interesting part, at least in my opinion, is this one, the programmer's manual. You have here a very nice overview about the instruction set, and you are going to get it from the point of view of someone who wrote the assembler himself. So it is going to be a bit interesting. Mostly the new part in here is the compiler overview, which tells about the fasm assembler and how it works, and this part about the syntax that tells about the fasm syntax. I remind you that every assembler has a bit of a different syntax and its own quirks, so fasm has its syntax too. The instruction set here speaks about the x86 architecture. As you can see, there are some very advanced topics that are covered in this place. It might be a bit difficult for a beginner to read those just like this, but as you are going to be more familiar with more instructions, you might be able to read these manuals of the instruction set. Other parts that can be found here are about the control directives and preprocessor directives. These are things that we might have the opportunity to touch a bit later, and some other directives. Directives are actually things that are not instructions. These are your ways to communicate with the assembler, to tell him what you want to happen, how you want him to create the eventual executable file. So this is a very nice documentation that you can always read if you are looking for something very specific or more advanced than what I'm talking about. This was the documentation. There is some nice examples page which contains not so many examples but a few very educating examples. Actually, if you can understand the code in all of those examples, then you are a pretty tough assembly programmer. There are examples here of many kinds of topics. For example, this example is about communication, about TCP/IP, and this one is about JPEG pictures, and so on. Just to show you that you can actually do whatever you want with assembly. It is not limited to anything. Lastly, before we actually download fasm, I want to show you the message board. This is the message board. You can see a few general topic boards and maybe some more specific ones. I click the main board. You can see many questions of different people. This is a very good board. At least personally, I had the opportunity to ask questions in here, and people treat your questions very seriously. Even if you are a beginner, you can ask questions here and people are going to answer. So I recommend you, if you have some very specific questions, mostly about the fasm assembler, and maybe even generally about assembly language in x86 architecture, I really recommend you to ask it here. There are other good boards, but this is one of those very good boards that you can ask questions and get answers pretty quickly from very smart people. You can even meet sometimes the author of fasm, Thomas Gristar, which actually might happen to be around and answer your question himself. This is pretty cool. Let's go back to the main page. And this time we are going to download the fasm package. When we click on the download page, just as a comment, note that The current year is 2014. Maybe in the future when you get to this page you are going to see something a bit different, but I guess it won't be too different. There are some versions here for fasm. There is fasm for DOS, for Linux, for Windows, and for other kind of things like Unix. I recommend you to take this one. If you are using Windows, you have to take this one. These are some other packages which are not very thoroughly tested, so I recommend you to take this one. Let's download the Windows version. Okay, it was downloaded to my computer. Now I have it here in D downloads. I get this compressed file, fasm w17117, which is the version of fasm. I'm going to extract it. I got this folder which contains some fasm files. First, I want to change it to fasm just to have a nicer name. I don't want to have this long name in my directory tree. Now I'm going to copy it to my programs folder. Okay, just like this. I don't need any installation or anything of this kind. I just have to copy the files. They just work as they came. This is the directory of fasm. This is what we got from the website. Let's look at what we got. Take a second to look at those files. The first file, and maybe the important one, this is what we actually wanted, is the assembler. It is called fasm.exe. If we just press it, some strange black window comes and goes very fast. Okay, I'll try again, and we might not be able to see what's written in there. The right way to operate these kind of files is using the command line. Maybe you have never seen the command line before. It looks like this. If I run it from here, from Total Commander, I get this black window. You might have seen it before at some point in your life. If you don't have Total Commander or you don't want to use it, you can actually run it from the Start menu. Okay, I press the Start button, and then I write CMD, which means command. I press enter and I get this black window. I can actually use this window to run programs. Let's go to the right directory, to the D programs fasm W directory. First I got to C, which is the root. Now I can move to D, and then I travel in the directories. I go to the programs directory and then to the fasm W directory. I can look inside the directory to see which files are there using the dir command. Here I see the files inside. I can actually see them in Total Commander or even in the Windows Explorer, but just so you know, you can see them here. In the past, people only used the command line in the very far past. Now we have all this nice GUI in the Total Commander and the GUI that comes with Windows. It is always useful to know about the command line. Here we have the fasm.exe. We can run it, and this time we are going to see the result. It is not going to disappear suddenly. What can we see here? Flat assembler, we see the version. It explains how to use it. Actually, in order to use it right, we have to write fasm and then the name of the file. Okay, we have to do something like this, fasm file. We just haven't wrote any source file, so we can't run it yet. And it says about some optional settings, which we are maybe going to talk about later. So this is actually the assembler, the flat assembler that we wanted. Okay, some other files that we can see, just so that you know what you got in this package. There are some text files about what's new that explains about new features in fasm. This file is the license. Maybe you want to read it so you can know what you may or may not do with fasm. This is a fasm which is some kind of editor. It looks like this. If you want, you can use it as an editor. Usually, I don't use it. Myself, I use Vim. It is your choice about which editor to use. Some other stuff that we have here. We have fasm.pdf, which is mostly, for the most part, the programmer's manual, just like we saw on the website. It's a bit different from the one on the website, but it is very useful to have it offline. Maybe if you don't have internet, you can check out this manual. It's a very nice one. I recommend you that when you get to the point when you can actually read part of it, then you probably should. It was written by smart people. Some other stuff that we have here. We have tools. I'm not going to talk about it at this moment. We have the source. This is a very interesting folder. It actually contains the source of fasm. I remind you that fasm is written in the fasm language. These are the actual files that are used to create the fasm assembler. These files together create this file, fasm. Let's look, for example, at one of them. These have the ink extension because they are include files. However, they also contain some assembly language. Let's look at it. For example, this is parser.inc. We can see that it actually includes assembly. Don't be afraid if you don't know all these instructions at this point. I assure you that eventually, at the end of this course, you are going to understand everything that you see here. And it is going to be pretty cool. This is assembly that was written by really tough people. It was written by the developers of fasm. We have two more folders. The include folder is also an interesting one. It contains some assembly files that you might want to use for your own application. That means that you can write an application and you can include those files in your application. They have some useful constructs inside of them that you might want to use. For example, this one, win32a, is an include file that you are going to use yourself probably in the future. At least I'm going to use it in my example. At this point you might not understand what is inside of it, but we are going to talk about it in the future. The last folder, the examples folder, it contains some examples of some interesting code. You might have seen that some of the examples are already in the examples page inside the website, inside the Flat Assembler website. But there are some examples that just come with the package, and it can be very useful if you forgot something, like how to write some part of the program. It is pretty useful to sometimes take a look at how those examples were written. I want to show you two examples out of this folder. First, look at the dialog. Let's first see what it does. It actually creates a dialog. We can write some stuff here. And then we click the button and we get some interesting message box. And then the program ends. Mostly it proves that you can actually create windows with assembly. And maybe you didn't believe it before. Maybe your friends told you, man, you can't create windows with assembly. You can't create GUI with assembly. So you can actually do it. Let's look at the code for a moment. This is mostly some pretty tough assembly code. We are going to learn later about how those things work. Let's look at another example, OpenGL. If you have some previous experience, OpenGL is some kind of library to create graphics, and it also works on Windows. Let's see what it does. It gives us some kind of rotating square with nice colors. This is also something that you can actually do with assembly. This is pure assembly. If we look at what's inside the file, this is real assembly. In my opinion, it's really cool. When I was a beginner, I thought that assembly was mostly command line stuff. And then I saw that you can actually do anything with it. Some important stuff, okay, after we've seen what's inside. I want to mention first that we want to be able to run fasm.exe from everywhere in our directory tree. For example, if we open CMD and we get this, and I want to run fasm.exe from here, it cannot be found. I get back this message that fasm is not recognized as an internal or external command. Mostly that means that the command line cannot find this program. I want to run fasm and I can't find it. I have to go to the path of fasm to be able to run it. I remind you that I have to go to do this. D, then programs, only now I can run fasm. And this is very limiting. I want to be able to run it from some other directories. For example, if I have some project, I want to be able to run fasm even though I'm not inside the fasm directory. This can be solved. It can be solved using environment variables. You can find it here. If you press Start and then go to My Computer, right click on it and press Properties. Then I choose Advanced System Settings. You might have to put down your administrator password. Okay, now I got to this screen. And I have here this button, Environment Variables. I press it. And now I get to this screen. There are some interesting stuff in here. We are not going to talk about most of them. The variable that I care about at this moment is path. Path is a special variable. What it means is that whenever you run the cmd.exe command line, you are able to run any program from this path. For example, you can see in my computer that Python 3.3 is included in the path variable. That means that I can run Python from wherever I am in the directory tree. Let's see an example. Okay, you see, Python is some kind of program, a programming language. You can see that I can run it from everywhere, even from inside the fasm directory. I want to have this feature for fasm too. Therefore, I'm going to add fasm to the path variable. D, programs, fasm_w. This is actually the directory here. D programs, fasm_w. I press the OK button, and then I press OK again. Now I have to close the command window and reopen it. Okay, if I want the changes to take effect, I have to open a new one. Now when I write fasm, it can actually find it. It can find it because it looks inside the path variable. I solved this first problem. If we are already talking about environment variables, I also want to talk about another variable that you cannot see in this list, which is called the include variable. I mentioned earlier that we have this folder include, which has some files that we might want to use in our programs later. If we want to be able to use them nicely without writing the full path to this file, for example, I'm going to want to use win32a.inc, and I don't want to write all this full path. That is mostly because someone else might want to run my program on his computer and maybe even assemble my program on his computer. And maybe on his computer, the path might be different. The path to the include file might be different. Maybe even inside your computer where you installed fasm, the path is different. That's why I'm going to add the include variable. I'm going to put in this path, the path of the include directory. I press OK and OK again. What is now going to happen is this. Whenever I run the fasm command, fasm is smart enough to read the include variable. That means that if I include this file in my program, I don't have to specify the full path. I just have to specify that I want win32a, and fasm will know how to find this file. We will see in the future how it really happens. Okay, this is mostly about installing fasm. If you have done those steps, you are ready to go for the next lesson.